morning. Today is the 27th of January and it's time for yet another not particularly interesting, very vague and probably quite boring vlog. So many of you will be aware that back in September, although the video was actually released in December because of the backlog of reviews that I had at the time, I had a go in a 2003 Volkswagen Passat 1.8 turbo on No Budget Reviews that at the time belonged to Mike Humble. It was his mother-in-law's car for many years, from 2005 through to the summer of 2023, and so I did it on No Budget Reviews. It wasn't the most popular video really, but then these aren't particularly interesting cars in many ways anyway. They are just a little bit on the bland side in many ways, apart from the things like the V6 and the W8. So just the normal 1.8 turbo, I don't think anybody really notices these as they sort of go around. But why is it that I am back driving the car and we're not anywhere near where Mike lives? That's because actually I bought the car. I bought it in November. Why hasn't it appeared on the channel? The reason why it hasn't appeared on the channel since that review went live is because I haven't been driving this car most of the time. A while ago I was aware of a situation with one of my friends from church who just had a bit of kind of unfortunate circumstances. He became unemployed, and so he lost his work van, and his very old Saab completely died. It had more MOT failures than I've really ever seen on many cars, and being a really old one, it just wasn't worth anything, and he couldn't afford a new car. Fortunately, what's happened is that his lady wife has been able to claim some kind of sort of benefit payments because she's not very well, and actually part of that includes her being able to get a car on Motability, which is great. But the Motability car is not arriving actually until the middle of next month at the time of recording, although those of you who are seeing this who aren't channel members on the Rover 45 V6 and set to Lado membership tiers won't see this until probably this car is, you know, not in the possession of my friend anymore. So he just needed something to keep him going, and I just so happened to have been offered this car by Mike, who just wanted something a little bit more modern to, you know, go around in and commute and things like that. And although this car is fine, it's actually in really good condition for a car that's almost 20 years old. The car that he's now got is just a bit more suitable. It's a lot more modern. It's about 15 years newer than this one actually. So he's got his new car, he doesn't need it, and he said, "Do you want it?" And I looked at the price he was kind of wanting for it, and I thought that's actually quite good. The thing is that Mike and I were just a little bit cautious of the clutch in this car. We thought it was maybe quite worn, and it is a little bit worn, and I think it's still the original clutch in this actually, but I had it checked. Mr. Coleman has checked it, and I had it checked as well before I could get it up to him. I had it checked locally down in Eastleigh, and both times Mr. Coleman and people down in Eastleigh just said there's nothing wrong with the clutch in this car. It's just how they are. It's there's nothing wrong with it at all. And so there isn't anything wrong with the clutch, so that's fine. We don't need to get it done. Actually, when I saw the cost of getting it done, it's not the easiest clutch to do in one of these cars because of the longitudinal front wheel drive layout that they have. I decided we wouldn't do that. there were a couple of other things that I needed to bring to Mr. Cobb's attention. The car needed an MOT, which has now been carried out, and it's fine. Like, I think if I were to keep this car long term, we might do something about the rear tyres and something about the brakes, but for the purpose it is serving, just like a sort of spare car or car to sort of lend out to people in case they need one, which is essentially why I bought it, and that's why I've not really been driving it very much, because, you know, it's just like a spare. It served it really, really well. I'm hoping at some point to take this down to Shedfest, which is the Auto Alex event, which I think is in May. I think it would be very suitable for taking to Shedfest. It won't be going to too many of the shows, so I don't think a lot of people would even look twice at something like this. These B5 Passats, because the styling was relatively modern when they came out in the late 90s, I think they came out about 97 and went round to about 2005. I don't think anybody considers these classics. Like if it was a W8 or maybe a V6 perhaps, but this 1.8 turbo with this engine that's really in everything, and by the way, if you pull the handbrake on like that, it doesn't damage anything, just so you know. They're just sort of invisible, really. And actually that's why this car and this is absolutely hilarious, this car was chosen to be in an advert that has been filmed already. I had to take it somewhere to have it filmed, and I signed up the Volvo 460 for this site. It's called Cinemoto. They kind of match cars that people have to television, film, and advertising, and the producers of the advert initially wanted something that was like the 460, but of course I didn't actually own it at the time. I put it up on Cinemoto and I'd forgotten about the fact that I'd even done it. But the gentleman who owns that site got in touch with me and said, "Do you still have it?" I said no, and actually it then sold at LSB car sales, and so like Lee didn't even have it either, but they changed their minds quite quickly. They wanted something a little bit newer, about 10 years newer than the 460, and this is a 2003, so it is. And next thing I know, the car's going to be in an advert, an advertising campaign. And I've got some footage of that. I'm not allowed to actually put that out at the moment. I'm going to wait until I definitely know that advert is out before saying anything more about it. But yeah, it was crazy being on like a sort of film set and everything. It was very, very strange. So we might see potentially more cars on little productions in the future as well. I know a couple of people I've spoken to since I've done it have put their cars on there as well. So there we go. What's actually wrong with this car then, having had a service and MOT just carried out? Well, the air filter and spark plugs hadn't been done for some time. This car does actually have a full service history. I've looked through it, there's tons of it. Because Mike's mother-in-law was a very, very conscientious person, she had it for so long, about 18 years she had this car. It's all documented, all the services. As I said, if I were to keep this car permanently, which I probably won't do, I would do the rear tyres, which I didn't even get an advisory for, to be honest. They're not that bad, but at some point they'll need doing. And the brakes are just a little bit worn. Nothing else wrong with them really. And that's it. There's nothing else to really worry about. I'll have to just take a look through and see when the cam belt was done. I haven't done that yet. That's about it. Nothing else to say. So once this car has been to at my friend's house again for him to use over the next couple of weeks before the new car that they're getting on Motability arrives. I might be lending this one out again, so you won't be seeing necessarily an awful lot, but it's there. Now it's had a full service including the plugs and an air filter. They hadn't been done in some time. Plugs were causing the car to just not quite perform exactly as it should. I noticed that when I was driving it for the first time back from Mike's house. It was a little bit of hesitancy on acceleration. So those have been done, air filter's done, coolant's all topped up. Nothing to say, it drives really well. Now that I know the clutch is just literally what they're like, this 1.8 turbo is quite quick, especially with this manual gearbox in it. So why don't I want to keep it? I'm just not a massive fan of you know, cars that don't have a lot of driver feedback if they're older ones. If they're more modern ones, then just as what they're like. But this is an old car, and there's not a lot of driver involvement with this car really. It's very much designed as a motorway cruiser, but unfortunately the spec of this, there's no cruise control in it. I think that would be maybe like an important thing to fit in a car like this. It doesn't have it. Also, rather like my Volvo S40, absolutely typical, isn't it, viewers? My windscreen mount failed again. It's happening a lot at the moment. I should make sure I lubricate that before I use it. But yes, here we are passing the Stellantis headquarters in Coventry. So yeah, the Volvo S40 at some point the air conditioning needs reinstating because it needs a new air conditioning radiator. This Passat also needs a new air conditioning radiator, but it's going to be so expensive to do that because you've got to take the whole front of the car off in order to do that, just like you would have to do with the cam belt in it. So I'm just not really concerned about that. Volvo I'm concerned about, because if I'm using that as an everyday car during the summer, I want it to work. So I will be doing that at some point. I haven't quite done that yet. Because I have been faced with a very large self-assessment tax bill. You know how it goes, viewers, and therefore I'm loath to kind of do that unless I actually need to. But in this, I don't think it's worth it. I just don't really want to do it. I'm not sure I'd get the money back in it if I did it. So there we go. That's sort of story of what this car's actually going to be used for. How long we actually will have this, I don't know. I'm not really sure. I think Shedfest is about the sort of limit of my ownership. You know, we've done as much as I think we need to do to keep this one going, and it's actually in better condition than most cars its age. The bodywork on it is fantastic, actually. For example, there was a little bit of corrosion on the rear subframe, but Mr. Coleman has dealt with that now, so that's not going to be an issue either. Once we actually kind of have the go-ahead to tell you more about the advert that this was filmed for, and some footage from the day on the set, I will put that up. At the moment I don't have that, so we won't do it. Thank you ever so much once again for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment below, and we shall see you again very soon for more incredibly vague and sort of slightly rubbish music.